We've talked about the illusion of job security, right? And the brutal reality of building a business. Okay. Now let's talk about why, right? Despite all that pain and struggle, countless individuals choose the entrepreneur path like I did, and why it can deliver a level of freedom and wealth that most employees can only dream of, right? And this is something that I remember even when I was a little kid. I remember selling in swap meets when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. That is how much I've always wanted to own a business, right? So the true reward of entrepreneurship isn't just money. It's leverage and it's control over your own life without someone else trying to dictate what it is you can and cannot do, right? When you work for someone else, you are exchanging your time directly for money, right? It's transaction. I've talked about that in one of my other videos, right? You work 40 hours, you get paid for 40 hours, you want more money, you work for more hours, or you get a raise that someone else approves, right? Your income to some degree is actually capped. It's directly tied to the number of hours you can physically put in, right? Unless you're a salaried worker, which is even worse because you're only going to get paid what you're going to get paid no matter how many hours you work, right? As an entrepreneur, you start building something that can detach your income from your time, right? You start to build systems. You hire people. You create intellectual property. You automate processes, right? You're not just earning a wage, you're building an actual asset. This asset can then generate income even when you're not actively working. That, my friends, is leverage. One of the companies that I own sells products into the dealer space. They are selling all the time. And every weekend, on average, I am probably making somewhere in the vicinity of about 15 to 20,000 every weekend without me even having to touch a thing because they're the ones that sell the actual thing. So think about it, right? When you create a product, a service, a brand, you're not just selling your labor, right? You're selling an actual solution, a value, right? A piece of intellectual property that can be replicated and scaled, right? 1 hour of your work can now impact thousands, millions of people and generate revenue from all of them. A job can't do that. A job could never do that for you, right? Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? So I started with zero, right? I started with less, just an idea and a kind of burning desire that I knew that I wanted to become an owner of something, right? So early on, it was on me, right? Every call, every email, every presentation. But then I started hiring as I started scaling. First, a virtual assistant because that was the cheapest way to go, right? Then I beefed up a sales, then a marketing expert, right? Each hire was an investment, right? A calculated risk, but each one freed up more of my time. It allowed me to focus on strategy, on bigger picture growth, on building more assets. Suddenly, my business wasn't just me. It was a collective engine of parts and moving cogs all the time working together, right? Running even when I was asleep. That, my friends, is 100% true leverage, right? And then there's control. You dictate your own destiny, right? You choose your own hours. You choose who you work with. You choose the problems you want to solve, right? You choose the impact you want to make, right? You're not waiting for a promotion, right? You're creating your own growth. You're not begging for a raise. You're designing your own income, whatever that stream of income might be. This control extends to your financial future in a way that's impossible in traditional employment, right? You are building equity as you are moving down the process of entrepreneurship, not just earning plain Jane income for your time. You're no longer trading time for money, like I said earlier, right? You're not just saving for retirement. You're building a sellable asset, right? A legacy that you can leave behind for your family, for your wife, for some of your kids, if that's what you're into. But essentially, you are building something, right, that is going to be around, if you want it to be, far beyond when you are gone, right? This compounding effect of smart decisions, building systems, and creating value is how real wealth is built. It's not about getting rich quick. That shit doesn't work. Anyone that tells you that is lying, right? It's about getting rich smart. It's about owning the means of your own production, right? It's about designing a life on your terms, not someone else's, right? This freedom isn't handed. It's earned through grit, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to your vision, right? It requires you to confront your fears, embrace uncertainty, and continually evolve all the time, even when you are uncomfortable, which you're going to be more often than not. But once you taste that freedom, once you experience like the exhilaration of building something truly your own that you put your blood, sweat into, you realize why so many are willing to endure the gauntlet, right? The potential is limitless, not capped by a corporate budget or a boss's approval. From employee to owner, and this is one that I had to make really quicker than I should have. It took me longer, but here's what I will say, right? So the biggest hurdle to transitioning from the employee mindset to the owner mindset actually isn't talent or opportunity at all. It's mostly psychological, right? It's a fundamental reprogramming of how you view the world, right? How you view problems and responsibility and how you take on responsibility, right? Number one, right? From task doer to problem solver. So as an employee, your job often to execute tasks assigned to you, right? Like that is your job, right? It's just to execute tasks. You follow procedures, you fit into a box. As an entrepreneur, you are the procedure, right? You are the box builder. You don't just solve problems given to you. You identify the problem, create the solutions, and then figure out how to monetize those actual solutions that you created, right? So this requires like a proactive, analytical, and like creative approach to everything. That's something that I really struggled with, right? You're not just fixing a bug, you're inventing the actual software, right? Number two, from scarcity to abundance, right? The employee mindset often operates from a place of scarcity, right? There's a limited pie. I need to get my slice, right? You're competing for like the usual that most people compete for when they're in a job, regular job, right? You're competing for promotions, raises, like limited resources. The entrepreneur mindset at its core is about abundance, right? The pie isn't limited, right? Like I can bake more pies whenever I need more pies. You look for opportunities to create value, to expand markets, to innovate, rather than just compete for existing crumbs on the table, right? That is one of the things that has catapulted my career more so than anything else, is just having the right mindset going into the projects and the companies that I built, and having that abundance mindset has been a massive, massive uptick for me, right? So number three, from risk aversion to calculated risk take. So playing it safe, right? It's a deeply ingrained employee trait. I'll be honest with you, right? Don't make waves, right? Don't rock the boat. As an entrepreneur, calculated risk is your oxygen. That's the one other thing that I found. Scary as shit, but true. You're constantly assessing, right? Experimenting and making bets with yourself and others, right? Like this doesn't mean being reckless. It means understanding odds, right? Mitigating down and having the courage to act when opportunity strikes, right? It's the difference between investing in a safe savings account that kind of loses to inflation and investing in a growth stock with higher potential. And unfortunately, just like everything good in life, higher risk, right? Now, chapter 4. So from blame to responsibility, right? So in a job, if something goes wrong, you might point to management, right? Lack of resources or like company policy, right? As an owner, I'll be honest, if something goes wrong, it's on you. It's all on you all the time, 100% of period, the end, right? Even if it's an external factor, your responsibility is to find a way around it, through it, or learn from it. Like this radical ownership is liberating once you embrace it. It's really scary in the beginning, but once you embrace it, it makes a massive difference to your business. It means you are truly in control of your outcome. You want something good on that? Read the book Extreme Ownership. That is a great book for that, right? I had to learn this the hard way early on, right? I blame market conditions, right? Bad hires or even like bad luck, right? But the moment I stopped looking for external excuses and started looking inward for what I could control, what I could change, that's when my business truly started to grow, right? It wasn't the market that was failing. It was really, honestly, it was my strategy. It sucked. It was terrible, right? It wasn't the employee who was incompetent. It was my training or hiring process. That was a very tough pill for me to swallow because it was absolutely 100. This shift from blame to radical responsibility is the most powerful weapon an entrepreneur possesses, right? Number 5, continuous learning and adaptation. Now, the corporate world often offers training, but I'm gonna be honest, at least with me and my experience, it's usually within like a defined scope, right? As an entrepreneur, your education never stops. You're learning all the time. Unfortunately, in the worst of times, unfortunately, right? You are constantly learning about like marketing, sales, finance, human resources, technology, psychology, everything under the sun as an entrepreneur. Believe me, you are learning all the time, right? You have to be like a sponge, right? Always adapting, always evolving, always moving. You need to be able to be adaptable, right? What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, right? Stagnation is the death for an entrepreneur. If you are not moving and you're not growing, you are dying. That is what we talk about in my companies, right? This mindset shift isn't a switch you flip, right? It's a journey. It's a process of like unlearning old habits and cultivating new ones, right? It requires deliberate effort, self-awareness, which is a tough one, and a hunger for growth, right? But it's the gateway to unlocking your true potential, not just in business, but in every area of your life. That is what entrepreneurship has taught me.